In a small seaside town lived a young girl who secretly dressed up as a boy going out. She didn't hate it. In fact, she rejoiced at the freedom it gave her going out. She would spend her time walking up and down the wharf, listening to the chatter people of the stalls, wondering what new things she can learn today. As she casually strolls the wharf, listening to the children's rung them up, she hums a very familiar tune to herself. But for this young lad, her favorite part was at the end of the wharf. In the library. She found her most important person here. She could still recall the first time they met. The young lad thought the librarian was the most elegant person they've ever laid their eyes upon. How embarrassing she was when she just stood there and stared. But those were simple times. A plague swept the town. The smell of burning flesh covering the town like a smothering blanket. Countless lives were lost. People were in shambles. Fingers were pointed left to right, but nobody really knew what was happening. Was God finally punishing us? The young lad, too young and naive, wanted to help somehow. The only thing she knew how to do was study. That's what she did. Night and day, the young lad tried every experiment she could. By her side stood the librarian, assisting the young lad through each experiment and gently reminding her to eat when too much time has passed. It was actually thanks to her that the young lad was finally able to find one recipe that might be able to work. But the ingredients could only be found in the next city over, which was about a month hike away. Determined to make it work, the young lad tried to convince the librarian to come with her, but to no avail. The librarian had to take care of her own family at home. But in exchange, the librarian gave the young lad her glasses, citing how maybe if she could see better, it would keep her out of trouble during her travels. Heartbroken but understanding, the young lad set out for 2 months. During those months, the young lad attempted to help anybody she could that was suffering from the plague, resulting in her getting the plague herself. But rather, instead of seeing it as a setback, the young lad finally had the chance to test her recipe. In her weakened state, she ground up all the ingredients into a small little vial, and then watched it turn into a weird galaxy blue-purple she's never seen before. But Mother Nature wouldn't let her rest as another dry heave spell racked the young lass's body. With no other choice, she downs a concoction and lays down to drive off the coughing fit. For the first time, though, after catching the plague, the young lad finally wakes up without sweat drenching her sheets. She's done it! She's cured! Unable to contain her excitement, the young lad instantly set out back home to bring good news to her family in her hometown. But the plague were merciless. Upon arriving home, the young lass couldn't believe her eyes. Her most important person. Gone. This couldn't be real. She's just sleeping, I'm sure, she thought. But the cold touch to the fingers said otherwise. Denial, anger, grief, the young lass tried everything. Potions to heal her lover, sacrifices to raise the dead. But all in vain. She lost her. And with only one final letter. Thank you for everything. Years go by, and all thanks to the medicine the young scientist provided, the plague finally cleared up. The ports opened up again, and the air finally smelled like its natural saltiness. But nothing could plug the hole left in the scientist's heart. Maybe one day I'll get to see her again, in another life, she pondered. But God had other plans. Turns out her first potion didn't cure the plague. Rather, it gave her decades of immortality. Outliving her peers, she learned how to fake her death one too many times over. Sooner or later, the scientist starts to wonder. Time heals any wound, huh? The scientist who lost count of how many lives she lived at this point sighed at the irony of the statement. If only she was here. But I guess there's no sense in worrying about it anymore, huh? The scientist gave a soft chuckle to herself as she brushed off her lab coat. Maybe, perhaps, one day. God damn it!